السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وأنكحوا الأيام منكم والصالحين من عبادكم وإمائكم إن يكونوا فقراء يغنهم الله من فضله والله واسع عليم. وليستعفف الذين لا يجدون نكاحا حتى يغنيهم الله من فضله والذين يبتغون الكتاب مما ملكت أيمانكم فكاتبوهم إن علمتم فيهم خيرا وآتوهم من مال الله الذي آتاكم ولا تكرهوا فتياتكم على البغاء إن أردن تحصنا لتبتغوا عرض الحياة الدنيا ومن يكرههن فإن الله من بعد إكراههن غفور رحيم. ولقد أنزلنا إليكم آيات مبينات ومثلا من الذين خلوا من قبلكم وموعظة للمتقين. صدق الله العظيم. Last Jummah we talked about this first ayah that I have just recited of Surah An-Noor, وَأَنْكِحُوا الْأَيَامَ مِنْكُمْ. Arrange the marriage of the spouseless amongst you. وَالصَّالِحِينَ مِنْ عِبَادِكُمْ وَإِمَائِكُمْ. And those who are capable among your born men and born girls, slave men and women. إِن يَكُونُوا فُقَرَاءَ يُغْنِهِمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. If they are poor, Allah will enrich them out of His grace. وَاللَّهُ وَاسِعٌ عَلِيمٌ. And Allah is all-encompassing and all-knowing. We talked in detail about the hukum of this ayah, وَأَنْكِحُوا الْأَيَامَ, that those who are not married and we are in charge of them, we should marry those people. Wallahu a'lam, how many of us in this gathering are in charge of those who are supposed to be getting married now, and they are at that situation where they need to get married? If we are, then the question would be, what did we do to fulfill the order of the ayah? Because of course, the purpose of the ayahs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the ahkam of Quran al-Kareem is not just knowledge, is practice. So this portion of the ayah, or this ayah, is reminding us of our responsibility to make sure that we marry those people that need to get married. They are at the age of getting married. We marry them and fulfill our responsibility towards them. As Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in the hadith, إِذَا خَطَبَ إِلَيْكُمْ مَنْ تَرْضَوْنَ دِينَهُ وَخُلُقَهُ فَزَوِّجُوهُ. If a person with deen and good akhlaq proposes to marry someone that you are in charge of, don't refuse that person. فَزَوِّجُوهُ. Marry that person and don't refuse him. إِلَّا تَفْعَلُوهُ. If you won't do this, there will be a lot of fitna and a lot of fasad. And as I mentioned at that time, and I really need to remind, because sometimes traditions are very strong and they don't allow anything to get into the heart. You will see a very strong barrier in front of our heart, just like ice built on top of it. And I hope it's only ice, is not a metal sheet. Really, this is what traditions are. That these traditions are extremely difficult for people to break. And after hearing all the ayahs, ahadith, clear ahkam, at the end the person says, yes, but you know what? This is not that, even she has to finish her education. He has to do this. This but comes at the end and it ruins everything. And it comes only because of traditions. But she is 40 years old and he is only 20 years old. This is also part of tradition. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam set that example for us too. And all of these type of questions, or he is this old and she is very young. Of course, I don't mean that we should not look at these things at all, but we should not use these as an excuse for just delaying the marriage. And what is happening is, because of this, we can go out and look what is the situation of the ummah and what is happening in our families. You will see girls, they are in their 30s, they are in their 40s, they are not married, and now it's even difficult. And I guarantee you this, most of them, I can't say 100%, but at least 90 or 95% of those are the ones that someone proposed to marry them at the right age, and the parents' response was, she is too young. Go out, talk to the parents, and you will find out. We don't want to repeat the same mistake. And again, I know at this time we may think, yeah, this is correct. But as soon as we walk out of the door of the masjid, and that tradition, that barrier comes, but how about her education? How about he himself? He is not working right now. He is dependent on his parents. But the parents are saying they're going to support him. We keep on looking at all of these restrictions and these details and everything, and then we want to find out every detail about what is in this person's mind. Really. Before marriage, now marriage became so difficult, subhanAllah, I feel sorry for the young people. They almost want to scan this person's brain and to see whatever it's in it. What type of food you like to eat? How many times a day you would want to eat? How about if she won't prepare a meal for you? What you would do? What if she doesn't want the children? What is your reaction? SubhanAllah, let them decide this later on. You're going to get into all of these things at this time, and the person will never find a person that is 100% matching his mind and his way of life. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is telling us two criteria, deen and khuluq. And believe me, if these two things are there, you don't have to worry about anything else. If deen is there, his deen will prevent him from doing injustice. He will not do zulm because he has iman. And he has akhlaq, khuluq. He has the right akhlaq, right manners. And because of his akhlaq, he is not going to misbehave. Regardless of what happens, but he will not misbehave because he has his akhlaq. He is well behaved. So, but the things that normally we look at, really, the things that we normally look at, education and money. These things never prevent the person from doing zulm. It is a fact. That this will never prevent the person from doing zulm and will never teach him to do what's right. He doesn't want to come home until 1 o'clock in the morning. And she tells him, I can't do it. I can't stay like this. He says, okay, go home. But if there is deen, there is iman, the person fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will know that this is her right. I can't be doing this zulm on her. So, deenahu wa khuluqa. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَنْكِحُ الْأَيَامَ. Marry those that are unmarried. Then the second ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلْيَسْتَعْفِفِ الَّذِينَ لَا يَجِدُونَ نِكَاحًا حَتَّى يُغْنِيَهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. And those who cannot afford to get married. This is now for those people. So it's not only that everyone has to get married. There is other part also to it. وَلْيَسْتَعْفِفِ الَّذِينَ لَا يَجِدُونَ نِكَاحًا. Those who cannot afford to get married, then they should protect themselves and they should always refrain from all kind of haram. وَلْيَسْتَعْفِفِ الَّذِينَ لَا يَجِدُونَ نِكَاحًا. Those who cannot afford to marry should keep chaste until Allah enriches them out of His grace. Now, if a person is not in a situation where he can really take care of himself and his family at all, whatever the reason may be, but this person does not even have a house. And parents have said that we will not keep her in our home. Find your own house. So, these type of situations, and there could be a lot of similar situations. So, in this situation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us that وَلْيَسْتَعْفِفْ. Now you should always try to remain from sin. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam in a hadith have told us what is the way of those who are not able to get married, what is the way for them to protect themselves against sins. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam says in a hadith which is in Bukhari and Muslim, Ya ma'ashar al-shabab, man istata'a minkum al-bata falyatazawwaj. O young people, whoever can get married should marry as soon as possible. فَإِنَّهُ أَغَضُّ لِلْبَصَرِ وَأَحْصَنُ لِلْفَرَجِ. Because this will protect your eyes and protect your private part. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَعَلَيْهِ بِالصَّوْمِ. And a person who cannot get married then should fast. فَعَلَيْهِ بِالصَّوْمِ. That person should fast. فَإِنَّهُ لَهُ وِجَاء. Fast will be a shield that will protect him from falling into sins. As we know, the effect of the fast is لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. So that you may fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, have the taqwa of Allah. In simple words, taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is needed so that a person would protect him and herself from falling into sins. Fasting, when a person would start fasting, initially, as the person would start fasting, will feel that these type of thoughts are increasing in his mind. And the desire is increasing. This is the general effect of it. But gradually, then when a person would continuously fast, then he will see the right effect of it, and then these desires will start going away. This is why Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam used the word فَعَلَيْهِ بِالصَّوْمِ. See, the word for you should fast sometime will be فَلْيَصُمْ, should fast. But عَلَيْهِ بِالصَّوْمِ, ala means you make it compulsory on you that you keep on fasting. And this is the wording that is used, that you keep on fasting. It's not that you fast 2 days and then you stop for 1 week and then you fast 2 days and say, I don't see this fast stopping me from it. If really a person is afraid of falling into sin, then فَعَلَيْهِ بِالصَّوْمِ. Then he should continuously fast. This continuous fasting then will prevent this person from falling into these type of lust and desires and committing sins because of them. But of course, this will be just a way of protecting oneself. The main thing is to use the right solution, the natural solution, and that is what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned in the first portion of the hadith, مَنْ اسْتَطَاعَ مِنْكُمُ الْبَاءَةَ فَلْيَتَزَوَّجْ. Whoever can afford to get married, then should marry. When a person tries to get married, of course, we know that a lot of difficulties would come on our way. Because it's a responsibility. And gradually the responsibilities will increase also. As the family will increase, responsibilities will increase. For sure it is a responsibility if at the time of marriage the intention was to protect oneself from sinning and to fulfill the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam says in a hadith which is in Sunan al-Tirmidhi, ثَلَاثَةٌ حَقٌّ عَلَى اللَّهِ عَوْنُهُم. There are three types of people Allah will surely help them. Three types of people. Allah guarantees, حَقٌّ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Allah guarantees that He will help them. Number one, al-mujahidu fi sabilillah. Number two, al-mukatab alladhi yuridu al-ada. Mukatab is a special category of slaves, inshallah. There is a special order coming about mukatab in the next portion of the ayah, so I'll explain it there. And the third person is an-nakihu alladhi yuridu al-afaf. Person who gets married with the intention of protecting himself from sinning. If the person is getting married because of this, with this intention of protecting himself from disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from falling into sins, to protect his eyes and to protect himself, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, surely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help this person. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, those who are not able to marry, then they should protect themselves, حَتَّى يُغْنِيَهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ, until Allah will enrich them out of His grace. وَالَّذِينَ يَبْتَغُونَ الْكِتَابَ مِمَّا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ فَكَاتِبُوهُمْ إِنْ عَلِمْتُمْ فِيهِمْ خَيْرًا. And those of your slaves who seek the contract of kitabah, contract kitabah with them if you know some good in them. What is kitabah? Mukatab. Mukatab is a slave who makes a contract with his master of paying certain amount of money and getting free. So either he requested his master that I will pay you $10,000 and you let me go, or maybe the master initiated it and he said, if you give me $10,000, I will let you go. The rule of the Sharia is, when a contract is made between this person and his slave, now this person, this slave, is called mukatab. And mukatab, you can say he's almost free now, in a sense that he does not have to work for his master anymore. His master, he does not have the responsibility towards his master of serving him, doing any of his work. Now he's free to go out and do whatever type of work he can do so that he can earn the money and get himself free. Let me change the terminology to make this hukum easier for us to understand. Captives of war. A person was captured in the battlefield and he was brought to the country. Sharia says don't put him in the prison, because this person will be in prison forever, no one would care of him, and he will be just waiting for his death. So hand him over to some Muslim family in the country that will be in charge of this person. This person will live out in the society. He will live a free life, not behind bars. He will be dressing normal. He will eat just whatever a normal person would eat, whatever that family eats in their home. Their responsibility is to provide him with all of his needs, and they will be in charge of him to make sure he does not create any fitna for people out there. He does not do anything wrong, because captive of war. He was in the battlefield. He was captured. Just imagine how careful we have to be of those people. And really, when you see how much people are protective and how people would deal with captives of war nowadays, that if they have any of those, I'm sure that person would be surrounded with armed forces, that even if he wants to scratch, he will need a permission to do that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no, don't do this with them. Don't deal with them in this way. When this person would be walking out on the street, by his dress, by his way of clothing, no one would know that he was a captive before. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in a hadith, "Albisuhum mimma talbasun." Give them the same dress that you wear. وَأَطْعِمُوهُم مِّمَّا تَأْكُلُونَ, and feed them the same food that you eat. So they will be living out in the society. But of course, we have to make sure if there are 1,000, 2,000 people of those, and you bring them back into the society, there could be a lot of fitna. There could cause a lot of problems. For that reason, Sharia solves that problem also, that the way of dealing with that is that make sure that these people are handed over to some others that will be in charge of them. So someone will be in charge of this person. And the person who's in charge of him will take care of his expenses, and at the same time he will be watching over him. Since he's watching over him, this is why the term slave is being used. A lot of time people will have objection that how come slavery is allowed in Islam. The reason they have that objection is because the type of slavery they have seen, the type of slavery they have seen in their cultures, or they have read in the history. So now when they read the word slave, they apply all of those cultural things that they have seen, or all of the things they have read in the history, they would apply to this word, and now they will object about Islam. How come Islam is allowing all of these things? This is just like in some culture, people don't like to get married. Because the way wives are treated after marriage, when people think of how wives are treated after marriage, they don't even want to hear the name marriage. In fact, in this society, most of the people, they don't want to get married. They want a partner in a life, but they don't want to get married. And that is because they feel that marriage is not a blessing, it becomes a problem. Now you are stuck and you are committed. And then if you want to divorce, you have to go through all of the problems. And main problem is, she will take half of your wealth away. That's the main thing that people think about. Money. That she will take my money. So, when people have seen those type of things attached to marriage and rights of women, then they will of course have objection about marriage. But when you look at the marriage from the Sharia point of view, a person would say there is nothing better than this for a woman. And this is the greatest blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for him and her. So, the point is that the word slave, when it's used and people apply all of the other things to it, and they object to Sharia, then why Sharia is allowing it? Sharia is not allowing those things that he has in his mind. This is why sometimes when people are asking that question, you need to ask them, can you spell it out that, okay, why slavery is bad? And then you will see how this person will start drawing the picture of a slave. That a person who will be kept in a small box, and you will beat him up whenever he does something wrong, and you will just throw a piece of bread to him like you would feed a dog. In fact, dogs are treated much better. I should use some other example in this part of the world. And so, all of these things, and then you go to some of the museums, and you see that how they have set the things like when those museums are representing of what used to happen to the slaves, how they used to be chained, and they were tortured, and what type of dress they were given, and they were put in the field that go ahead and do work, and they will be working day and night and have no rights. Of course, when you look at that and you look at the ayahs of Al-Quran and you look at the order of the Sharia about slaves, it's totally two different things. These are totally two different things. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that when you have slaves and you have those people who were captured in the battlefield, and now we put them back into the society, and we made some people in charge of them. These people started behaving now, and the person in charge, he feels that, mashallah, this person, he's good. He's not going to, if we leave him out in the society without anyone being in charge of him, still he's not going to cause any harm to the society. So Sharia encourages this person, set him free. But he feels that I really spent a lot of money on him. Last 10 years, I spent money on his education, on all of his needs and everything. So it's only fair for me that I get paid back for whatever I spent, $10,000, $15,000. So he says to this person, okay, I feel that it's safe for you now to be out in the society without anyone being in charge of you. In fact, in simple words, you can say, now he is in a position where if we have more captives of war, he could be in charge of them. Because he will become a normal person in the society. So he says, he makes a contract with his slave, with that person, with that captive of war, and he says to him that, okay, if you go out in the field and earn. And whenever you have $15,000, hand me the $15,000 and you are free. So now he goes out and he works. Of course, one source of his income would be that he would find a job and he will work. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَآتُوهُم مِّن مَّالِ اللَّهِ الَّذِي آتَاكُمْ, and give them from the wealth of Allah that He has given you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ordering the master that as you making him work for your $15,000, give him some money yourself also. Subhanallah. He is going to charge him $15,000, out of that he's giving him a couple of $1,000s. Not only this, then this order goes to the public. This order goes to the Muslim Ummah that everyone in the community should try to help this person. How people are going to help? Through donations, and in addition to donations. Now, when you read the ayah of zakat, you would see one of the categories of zakat is وَفِي الرِّقَابِ, freeing the slave. This does not refer to giving a slave money or paying the master to free a slave. Which means, if there is no contract of mukataba between the master and slave, then that type of person cannot use the zakah. But when there is kitaba, when this type of contract is there, now you can give the slave the money of your zakah. So now people are giving him from their zakat money. Subhanallah, look at the beauty of the Sharia, that our zakah is being used to set free that captive of war. And the order is also given to the government. When there is a Muslim government, the order goes to them also that from Baytul Mal there has to be some amount specified for riqab, for helping al-mukatab, those who have made this type of contract with their masters. Whenever there was Baytul Mal, there was always an amount of money fixed for those who would like to who will make this contract with their masters. And from Baytul Mal, they will get the money and go and get themselves freed. So, subhanallah, when you look at this, that the government is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ordering the Muslim government to help them, is asking the general public to help, to the extent that you can even give that person your zakah. And is asking the master himself also that you should help him. This is why Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'een, when they used to make this type of contract with their slaves, they used to normally at the end they would forgive that person 1/3 or 1/4 of whatever they have assigned. That this is my share in it. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَآتُوهُم مِّن مَّالِ اللَّهِ الَّذِي آتَاكُمْ, and give them out of the wealth of Allah that He has given you. So now, look at the ayah what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالَّذِينَ يَبْتَغُونَ الْكِتَابَ مِمَّا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ, and those of your slaves who seek the contract of kitaba, كَاتِبُوا فَكَاتِبُوهُمْ إِنْ عَلِمْتُمْ فِيهِمْ خَيْرًا, make the contract of kitaba with them if you know some good in them. Of course, this is the condition. إِنْ عَلِمْتُمْ فِيهِمْ خَيْرًا, if this master feels that this person would do any good, which means this khair means two things. Number one, he can work. So he can go out and find a job where he will earn. And the second meaning of khair is that this person will not be harmful to the society. That you put him out, you set him free, and now he kills someone and runs away. So you have to make sure that alimtum fihim khayra. You see that he is good, mashallah now. Of course, when you live with a person day and night, by this person's behavior, you can understand if he could be beneficial for the ummah or he could be harmful out to the society. So if you think that there is khair in him, now let him go. And when you let him go, وَآتُوهُمْ مِنْ مَالِ اللَّهِ الَّذِي آتَاكُمْ, and give them from the wealth of Allah, out of the wealth of Allah that He has given you. This portion of the ayah is very amazing, the way the wordings have been placed over there. Of course, number one, the order by itself, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is encouraging everyone to help these captives of war to be freed and to come out in the society and live like free people like anyone else in the society. And this is, of course, because of this order of the Sharia. You see, look at the history. You would never find this example anywhere in the history. Never find this example anywhere in the history where captives of war became a normal part of the society, and then they were free to be in any and every field of the life. To the extent we find in our Islamic history, those who were captives of war, as the word will use the word slave for them. Not only that they became scholars, they became imams, they became great mufti and muhaddiseen, the great mufassirin. They in fact even became the commander-in-chiefs for the Muslim army. Who would trust a captive of war, that a person who 5 years ago he was captured from a battlefield fighting Muslims, that he becomes the commander-in-chief for all Muslim armies? They became commander-in-chief for Muslim armies. Not only this, they became the governors, and we also have examples where they became the rulers. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us. Where else would you find this example that captives of war had so much freedom and so many rights? Not only now, you can see that, subhanallah, if today someone will give them the citizenship of the country, that will be a big thing. Okay, since he was in our prison for 5 years, we will give him a citizenship of the country. Not only this, I mean, you see in our ummah, subhanallah, that these captives of war, they became great leaders of the ummah. At this time, some of them, it looks like they are forcing me to mention their names, that tell them that I was this. Like Ata ibn Abi Rabah, rahmatullahi alayhi, the greatest mufti of his time. The greatest mufti of his time. And he used to be in Makkah Mukarramah. He was a slave to a woman who set him free. From the time he was set free, he started learning deen. He became a great scholar and became the greatest mufti of his time. Especially up to this day, he is the greatest source for the masail of Hajj. As far as the masail of Hajj are concerned, throughout the Muslim ummah at that time, and I'm talking about the time of Tabi'een, where there were still some Sahaba there. people used to go and ask Ata ibn Rabah all the masail, especially the masail of Hajj. Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, well-known Muslim ruler, very powerful. He went to Hajj, performed tawaf. After tawaf, of course, he wanted to visit Ata ibn Rabah, the greatest scholar of the Ummah. Ata ibn Rabah had his own gathering. People were sitting there and he's teaching them. Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, he goes and he says salam to him and he sits next to him. Ata ibn Rabah, without even looking that side, he says wa alaikum assalam, and he keeps on talking to his people. Abdul Malik's son was very upset. Prime Minister. He's very upset that he have never seen anyone treating his father this way. So he describes Ata ibn Rabah. He says, I was amazed. A person like him, a black man with curly hair, flat nose, big lips, and he doesn't even reply to the salam of my father properly. He doesn't even look at my dad. After Ata finished talking to everyone, he turns to Abdul Malik and he says salam to him. Abdul Malik replies to his salam and he says, I need to ask you a few questions. He says, okay, go ahead, ask. And after he asked his question, he gives him the answer to the question. He says, okay, now I have to deal with these people. I have to answer other people's question. And Abdul Malik gets up and he goes. His son says, I never felt so humiliated anywhere else in my life the way I felt over there. And in reality, later on, of course, he was young at that time. He's narrating it later on in his life. He says, later on I realized that this is the honor Islam has given to that person because of the knowledge of this deen. That a person who some days ago he was a slave, now he doesn't even care about the most powerful ruler in the world, Abdul Malik. There was no superpower in the world that could confront his government. Most powerful ruler in the world. And this person is sitting, he doesn't even care. And then we know Bilal radiallahu anhu, and you just keep on going through these examples throughout the history. The history is full of it. In fact, there was a time when all the greatest scholars of that time were all that were slaves some time ago. This is during the time of Tabi'in and Taba' Tabi'in. The greatest scholars were from among those. Muhammad ibn Sirin rahimahullah, one of the greatest of the Tabi'in. In fact, when the scholars discuss about who is the greatest of the Tabi'in, they mention few names. One of them is Muhammad ibn Sirin. His father Sirin was the slave of Anas radiallahu anhu. And Sirin, the hadith is in Sahih al-Bukhari. Sirin went to Anas radiallahu anhu and says, I would like to make this contract of kitaba. Anas radiallahu anhu knew that this person is very important to me, and especially he was paying a lot of attention to teaching his son Muhammad. So Anas radiallahu anhu's fear was, if I set him free, if I do this contract with him, he's going to be free, then who knows if he would learn deen or not, especially his son, if he would learn or not. I will not have any power over him. So he refused to do the kitaba with him. Sirin went to Umar radiallahu anhu and complained. The next thing people saw, Umar radiallahu anhu standing with a whip. And Anas, didn't you read this ayah? فَكَاتِبُوا مِنْ عَلِمْتُمْ فِيهِمْ خَيْرًا? That do this contract with them if you see any good in them. And don't you see that mashallah is a good person? Right there Anas radiallahu anhu says, okay, I accepted ya Amirul Mu'minin. But of course, Muhammad ibn Sirin then, he stayed. Subhanallah, after getting free, he stayed with Anas radiallahu anhu. And until Anas radiallahu anhu was alive, he never left the company of Anas radiallahu anhu. And then he became to the level where especially when it comes to the field of interpreting dreams. He is the highest in that field in this ummah. When Anas radiallahu anhu passed away, his wasiyah, it was part of his will. When they read his will, it was his will that I want Muhammad ibn Sirin to lead my janazah. And as I said, his father was a slave. His father was a captive of war. He was captured during one of the battles at the time of Umar radiallahu anhu. And during the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, same time, he gets free. It's not after centuries. It's not after 20, 30 years. During the Umar radiallahu anhu, the Khilafah of Umar is altogether 10 years. So within these 10 years, he was captured, then he is free too. And then finally his son, one of the greatest of Tabi'een, where people now who were born and raised in this deen, and their parents were Sahaba, they go and sit in the company of Muhammad ibn Sirin, and they learn from Muhammad ibn Sirin. Muhammad ibn Sirin is their teacher. So, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, that Katibuhum, make this type of contract with these slaves when you see good in them. And because of this order, as I said, subhanallah, we find those beautiful examples in this ummah, and the examples that you can only find in the history of Islam, nowhere else. And then I was saying, وَآتُوهُم مِّن مَّالِ اللَّهِ الَّذِي آتَاكُمْ. Give them from the wealth, out of the wealth of Allah that He has given you. Beautiful way of putting this message. Of course, it's from Rabbul Alameen, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't just say and help them to pay their dues. No, look at the way the ayah is being, the message is being presented. وَآتُوهُم, give them from where? Min malillah, from the wealth of Allah. This wealth that you have is from Allah. If Allah wanted, He could have given it to that person, but He gave it to you, so you help him. And it's not that you got it because of your abilities and your power. Alladhi atakum, it's because He gave it to you. So give them from the out of the wealth of Allah that He has given you. This ayah, it's by itself, although there are many other ayahs, but this ayah by itself, it's really enough. If people will ponder into the message of the ayah, it's enough to solve every financial problem the world is having at this time. The reason is, we know that at this time, world knows only two different systems, and that is, they may call it capitalism and socialism. The two wars are between the two. One says the person is free to earn however he wants and spend in whichever way he wants. Give the person total freedom. The other one claims that no, everything has to be shared by every person. That is communism. So, everything has to be shared by every person. When you look at both of these ways, you can see that both of these ways are totally unnatural. This is why then they have to put restrictions to them. And that is, okay, we will give the person the freedom to earn whichever way he wants and spend however he wants, but these will be our restrictions to him. So they are putting restrictions there. Where these restrictions are coming from? In the other system, whether you call it socialism or communism, that everyone is free to share everything. But then they put restriction. If a person is living in a house, not everyone just can go and stay in that house, that sharing the house with him. Where are you bringing these restrictions from? So both are putting restrictions. Now, the problem comes in both systems, that with all of these restrictions, you will see at the end, restrictions will apply to only poor people. And In one system, you see the wealthy people are getting everything, and they will just keep on accumulating all the wealth from the whole country. And as we know it, 6, 7 people are taking, 6, 7 families are taking the whole wealth of the whole country. And in the other system, the poor people are really working day and night. Day and night they are working. They're doing all the farming and they work so hard, and at the end of the day, what do they get? They're getting nothing out of comparing to what the type of work they do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that is the wealth of Allah. So make the rules of Allah applicable to the wealth. What are the sources of halal earning, and what are the sources of, what are the rules of spending? Just take that from Rabbul Alameen subhanahu wa ta'ala, because this is the wealth of Allah and He has given it to you. Since it is His and He gave it to us, it's a gift from Him. And all the resources that every system and every person is fighting about are in the control of Allah. You may work so hard to have all the growth, but there is no more rice. We see it. I'm giving a practical example that saying now India and Pakistan stop importing rice, and therefore the price of the rice is getting higher. And vegetables, they all are getting so expensive. Gas price is getting so high, sky high. And not only this, even the water is getting expensive. Subhanallah. Every person needs water. You expect at least, the countries that are well-to-do, they will provide free water, if nothing else. Subhanallah, the price of water is getting high. Normal need, people need heat, and they can't afford it. They can't afford to put heat in their house. It's too expensive to run the heating system. The gas prices are too high. So, what is all of this? Because we consider all of these resources belong to some human beings. Subhanallah, if they had any power over air, we would have to pay for breathing. Because human beings consider these resources belong to human beings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Is malillah." This is the wealth of Allah. He created fish in the ocean. Didn't put no restriction. We put restrictions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, okay, go ahead, put the restriction. Now the growth will stop also. All of this is in Allah's hand. And we see it. It's very natural. During the time of, in the old days, when people needed camels, they needed horses. There were horses at every house. Every home, almost every house, people had either a camel or a horse. What happened to all of those camels and horses in the world? They disappeared. When did they go? As the need goes away or restrictions are being placed, accordingly Allah takes that ni'mah and stops that risk. He closes that door of the risk. Maybe a better example for all of us now. Do we think 50 years ago people would not wake up for Salatul Fajr, and they were waking up about 11, 12 o'clock in the morning because they didn't have alarm clocks? No. In fact, we know that they used to wake up even before the time that we normally would wake up with our alarm clocks. And a person is having 3 alarm clocks and he doesn't wake up. But in those days, people would wake up. Natural ability that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had gifted people, that they want to wake up 5 o'clock, he would wake up 5 o'clock. He had an appointment for after 2 months, he will remember it. Today, tomorrow's appointment, I don't remember it. I need my organizer. It doesn't beep, something happened to it, I missed their appointment. natural abilities. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's gift. He gave it to the human beings, but when we depend on anything else, He takes it away. This is very natural. People used to walk for miles. They used to walk for miles. Salama radiallahu anha, when she did the hijrah, there was a person, non-Muslim, later on he became Muslim radiallahu anhu. Abu Talha radiallahu anhu, I think. The one who had the key of the Kaaba. He saw this woman walking all by herself. Where are you going, ma'am? I'm going to Medina. No one is with you? No one wanted to help me. Okay, here is my camel. Get on my camel. And he walks all the way to Medina with her. He dropped her in Medina and he says, now, look, the city over there, all these houses, this is Medina. Okay, I'm going back home. And he walks back 14 days to Medina, 14 days back to Makkah Mukarramah. He's walking all of this. What happened to all the preparations? Did he have, where was his fridge? And his food? Subhanallah. 5 hours trip. The car is full of food. There is no more room. These are abilities Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give according to the need. So now we say that, okay, every person can eat only this much. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you need this much? Okay, then we will give you this much. See, it all comes about trusting that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the doer of everything and everything is in His control. A non-Muslim can never understand this. It's a fact. A person who has no iman will never understand this. And when the person would not understand this, then will always think that I'm the one who will have to control these resources. How much fish and how much rice and how much vegetable and how much growth and how much water. And if people will drink more water, then we will be out of water. If more children will be born in the world, then we will run out of food. SubhanAllah. This family planning, I'm sure animals don't do it in jungles. And still they are having all the food in the world. We are the ones that are struggling to have food. So, all of this is in Allah's control. He is the provider. He is the creator. He creates according to the need of human beings. It's not that He neglects the human beings. Okay, you do however you can. But when we try to be too intelligent, this is just like you see someone trying to do something and you know it. It's your field. No, let me do it. Okay? No, you tell him this is wrong. No, let me try it. Okay, go ahead, do it. And you make him spend 3 to 4 hours trying to do it and he can't do it at the end. Then it takes you only 1 minute here, this is how to do it. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, okay, you think you can do it? Go ahead. And we see thousands of people dying and our prices are going high and all of these problems. It's just because some people are sitting up there thinking that they are doing everything. So this is what I was saying. Look at the ayah. Look at the message of the ayah. وَآتُوهُم مِّن مَّالِ اللَّهِ الَّذِي آتَاكُمْ. Give them from out of the wealth of Allah that He has given you. It's Allah's wealth. He has gifted that to you. He gave it to you. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in a hadith, there are people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses them as keys for the khair for all other human beings. Allah uses these people as key for the khair for all human beings. He gives them a lot of wealth and then through them Allah gives it to other people. Allah will keep on giving it to them until they will keep on giving it to others. When they will stop giving it to others, Allah will stop giving it to them also. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, once he said to Asma radiyallahu anha, Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu's daughter, Aisha radiyallahu anhu's sister, he says to Asma radiyallahu anha, Ya Asma, la tuhsi fayuhsi Allahu alayki. Ya Asma, when you give donation, don't count pennies. Okay, should I give this much? Should I give, okay, let me give $1 more. Okay, how about I give 100 more? Don't keep on counting, otherwise Allah will count for giving it to you also. Irdakhi mastata'ati. Give as much as you can, Allah will give you the same type of, in the same way, He will give you without counting. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the right iman and aqeedah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the right belief. And I just remembered that when we were talking about these slaves, it's through the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Quran, teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and the virtue of freeing the slave that is mentioned in Quran and Hadith, subhanallah, we see Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in continuously, they were in the habit of freeing slaves. They were continuously in the habit of freeing slaves. And we find that Aisha radiallahu anha, this is only the record that we have in the books. We can only talk about that. Things that we don't know, of course, we can't even count. But when we look at Aisha radiallahu anha, she have freed about 67 slaves in her life. Aisha radiallahu anha, who never worked in her life, never left her home for a job, for anything. She freed 67 slaves. Sayyidina Abbas radiallahu anhu, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's uncle, he had freed 70 slaves. There was a Sahabi whose name was Hakim ibn Hizam radiallahu anhu. He had freed 100 slaves. Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, 1,000 slaves. Son of Umar radiallahu anhu. There was another Sahabi whose name was Zulqila al-Himyari radiallahu anhu. 8,000 slaves that he had freed in his life. 8,000. And one of al-Ashra al-Mubashshara, Abdul Rahman ibn Auf radiallahu anhu, well-known Sahabi of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, 30,000 slaves that he had freed in his life. 30,000 slaves. This is, of course, the teaching of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is the teaching of this deen of Allah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide all of us to Sirat al-Mustaqim. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the true iman in His ayahs and in the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.